Sophia Williams stood in front of the large glass windows of a restaurant, staring out at the city's skyline. The soft hum of the restaurant's bustling kitchen and the rhythmic clink of silverware on plates filled the air behind her, but her thoughts drifted far away from the present moment. It had been a long journey from the day she had taken over her father's struggling business to this point where she now presided over one of the most sought-after luxury dining establishments in the city. A black woman in her mid-30s, she had taken the reins of a place that had once been a hidden gem, but was now the crown jewel of the local dining scene. Sophia's success was a result of an unyielding drive and her sharp vision for excellence. But the road had not been easy. Every day, she fought against invisible walls of prejudice, barriers that came in the form of skepticism, bias, and sometimes outright dismissal. It wasn't just the struggles that came with being a woman in a male-dominated industry. It was the additional weight of being a black woman in an environment where people didn't always expect her to succeed. Sophia had fought for every inch of respect, carving a path for herself that spoke louder than the doubters and critics. Her father's restaurant had been small, struggling to make ends meet when he passed. His dream had always been to turn it into something bigger, something that would elevate the dining experience in their neighborhood. But the challenges had proven too much for him. And when he passed away, Sophia had inherited not only his debt but his dream. With the support of a few loyal staff members, she had transformed it. The walls of the restaurant, once dull and uninspiring, now glistened with elegance. It was the epitome of class, its chandeliers casting a soft golden hue over the refined dining areas. The menu, created by some of the best chefs in the city, offered a modern twist on classic dishes, each plate as much a work of art as it was a meal. The guests who filled the tables in the dimly lit dining room were the elite, business executives, artists, actors, and socialites, people who reveled in luxury and indulgence. For Sophia, these high-end patrons were not just customers. They were a reminder of her success, a testament to what she had achieved. She had managed to build an establishment where excellence was the expectation, not the exception. Yet, despite her accomplishments, she often found herself wondering how much of her success was due to her own brilliance and how much was due to the people who supported her along the way. But there was one thing she knew for sure: she was in control now. This was her domain. On that evening, the restaurant was alive with the chatter of well-dressed patrons, their laughter floating in the air as waiters moved gracefully between tables. Sophia was dressed in a sleek, black evening gown that hugged her form and exuded sophistication. Her hair was pulled back into an elegant updo, and her presence was commanding. As she made her way through the dining hall, she smiled and exchanged pleasantries with regulars, taking a moment to check in with the staff and ensure everything was running smoothly. But tonight, an incident was brewing that would make Sophia question the depth of her power and how far she had truly come. At a table near the center of the room, a well-dressed woman in her late 20s, Michaela, sat with her husband, toasting to her recent promotion at a major tech company. Michaela was a local socialite, known for her impeccable taste and extravagant lifestyle. She was a regular at high-end restaurants like this one, always seeking out the best places to dine and flaunting her successes. She was confident, self-assured, and accustomed to the luxury around her. The restaurant's ambience matched her perfectly, and she felt right at home in the elegant space. It was exactly the kind of evening she deserved. A night to celebrate her achievements with a glass of fine wine, surrounded by opulence. As the couple savored their meal, Michaela noticed that her glass of wine had been knocked over, spilling onto the tablecloth. She sighed, annoyed by the disruption. Her husband, trying to smooth things over, began to dab at the mess with the napkin, but it only seemed to frustrate her further. Michaela hated the idea of any imperfection sullying her evening. As she glanced around, she saw Toby, a young waiter in his early 20s, walking toward her table. He was new to the fine dining scene, eager to please, with a youthful exuberance that sometimes clouded his judgment. Toby had joined the restaurant just a few weeks earlier. He was bright-eyed and enthusiastic, excited by the prospect of working in such a prestigious establishment. He was still learning the ropes, but he knew the importance of making a good impression. He had been trained to provide impeccable service, but tonight his nervousness was bubbling to the surface. He saw Michaela's frustration and decided to step in. As he approached the table, Toby noticed Michaela's discomfort. Her glass of wine was half emptied, and she appeared agitated. With an air of superiority, he leaned over and made a snide remark under his breath, completely unaware of the woman's status or position. "Maybe you should stick to a place more suited for your type of people," he muttered, his voice laced with condescension. "Here it's about elegance, and you seem a bit out of place." Michaela froze, her hand pausing midair as she reached for her wine glass. The words hit her like a slap, and for a brief moment, she couldn't believe what she had just heard. A quiet anger surged inside her as her face flushed with a mix of humiliation and fury. Her grip tightened around the napkin on her lap, her hands trembling as the weight of the insult began to settle in. The nerve of this waiter, she thought. How dare he speak to her like that? "You're seriously going to speak to me like that?" Michaela's voice was steady, but there was an undeniable edge to it. Her eyes locked onto Toby's, the venom in her words enough to make him take a step back, unsure of how to react. Toby, oblivious to the gravity of his words and unaware of the woman he had just insulted, shrugged nonchalantly. "I just thought you might be more comfortable somewhere else," he mumbled, trying to salvage the situation with a nervous smile. Michaela's fury bubbled over, but she held her composure. "You should be more careful," she warned, her voice cold. "You don't know who you're speaking to." The words hung in the air, and Toby, still unaware of who Michaela was, simply nodded awkwardly before moving on. But the damage was done. Michaela's anger simmered, and she couldn't help but wonder how such disrespect could occur in a place like this. The restaurant, which she had chosen for its prestige and class, now seemed tainted. But Michaela didn't know just how deep her discomfort was about to go. She would soon discover that the woman she had just been insulted by in the most unexpected way was the very person who owned this empire. And that realization would change everything. The restaurant, once vibrant with the sounds of clinking glassware, laughter, and soft music, had fallen into an eerie silence. The air was thick with tension, and the moment Michaela had confronted Toby seemed to stretch on, hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Toby, however, was completely oblivious to the gravity of the situation. He had heard the rumors among the staff, whispers of the restaurant's owner being a woman, but those details were never significant to him. He was young, eager to make a name for himself, and focused solely on getting through the night. In his mind, it was just another table to serve, another evening to survive. What Toby didn't know was that the woman sitting at the table with him was none other than Sophia Williams, the very person who owned the establishment he worked for. She was the woman whose vision and hard work had turned this once small, struggling restaurant into the thriving luxury hotspot it had become. She was the woman who had carved out a place for herself in an industry where few women, let alone black women, had the opportunity to rise, and she had just overheard every word that Toby had spoken. Sophia had seen many forms of prejudice in her life, but this time, something about it struck a chord deep within her. This wasn't just a racial or gender-based insult. It was a direct attack on her identity, her business, and everything she had worked tirelessly to create. It was an attack on her vision, the dream she had built brick by brick. Her blood pressure rose for a moment, but she didn't let her anger take control. Sophia knew better than anyone that reacting impulsively could ruin everything she had spent years cultivating. She didn't rush into the situation. Instead, she stood frozen in place for a moment, allowing the anger to simmer quietly in her chest, then took a deep breath. Her fingers gripped the edge of the wall as she stared out at the dining room. She could feel the weight of every patron's gaze as they subtly looked on, some of them clearly noticing the tension building in the room. Yet she remained composed. Turning slowly, Sophia made her way to the back of the restaurant. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor, each step measured, deliberate. She walked past the kitchen, where chefs moved with purpose, and toward the staff room, where she paused for a moment to regain her composure. Then, she gave a simple instruction to the restaurant manager, who was overseeing the evening's operations. "Handle the rest of tonight's service," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I'll take care of this." After a few minutes, Sophia returned to the dining area, her presence immediately commanding attention. The buzz of conversation had dulled, and the subtle shuffle of staff on the floor ceased. She walked directly over to Michaela's table, her gaze focused, but her demeanor calm. The room seemed to hold its breath as Sophia approached. Michaela, still shaken by the confrontation, looked up and met Sophia's eyes. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman in front of her, but there was something about the way Sophia carried herself, something powerful and unwavering, that immediately caught Michaela's attention. The air seemed to change the moment Sophia spoke. "Is everything all right here?" she asked, her voice smooth, but with an edge that hinted at a deeper strength. Michaela, still fuming, hesitated for a second. Her anger had not subsided, but there was something disarming about Sophia's presence. It was as though Sophia had already assessed the situation and was in control of it. Michaela took a deep breath and spoke, her voice shaking slightly with the residual fury. "This waiter just insulted me," she said. "He told me I didn't belong here, that I wasn't elegant enough for this place." Sophia's eyes never wavered as Michaela spoke. She turned her head toward Toby, who was now standing near the bar, nervously wiping down glasses. The young man had no idea what was coming. Sophia's eyes locked onto his, and for a brief moment, she allowed the silence to linger as though the weight of her stare was enough to say everything that needed to be said. Then she spoke, her voice cool and controlled. "I'm afraid you've made a grave mistake," she said, each word deliberate. "The restaurant you're working for, the one that pays you, is not just a business for me, it's a part of who I am. It represents my hard work, my dreams, and my vision. And you, Toby, have insulted one of my guests in a way that cannot be undone." The words hung in the air and the silence deepened. The patrons, who had been whispering among themselves, suddenly stopped talking. The entire restaurant seemed to be watching the unfolding drama. It was as if everyone knew that something significant was happening, and they all stood there, waiting for the next move. Michaela, now fully realizing the gravity of the situation, widened her eyes in disbelief. She had no idea that the woman who had been so calm and collected was the owner of the very place she had been dining at. "Wait, are you the owner?" Michaela asked, her voice filled with shock. Sophia nodded slowly, her expression never faltering. "Yes, I am," she replied simply, "and it's a shame that this even happened here." Toby's face, which had been flushed with embarrassment and uncertainty, now drained of color. His eyes flicked between Sophia and Michaela, the realization of his mistake slowly dawning on him. He had no idea who he was speaking to, no idea that the person he had insulted was the very woman whose dream he was helping to build. Now his arrogance seemed small and foolish, and the weight of his words seemed to settle on his shoulders like a heavy burden. Sophia didn't take her gaze off Toby. "You will be going home for the night, Toby," she said coldly. "You're relieved of your duties here." The restaurant manager, who had been quietly observing from a distance, nodded in agreement. Toby opened his mouth to apologize, but the words caught in his throat. He stammered out a few incoherent syllables, but it was clear that nothing he said could undo the damage he had caused. Sophia stood tall, unwavering in her decision. He had crossed a line that could not be erased with words. Michaela, still in shock, watched as Toby, now humbled and defeated, walked out of the restaurant, his head hanging low. As the door closed behind him, the tension in the room began to lift. Conversations resumed, the hum of the restaurant slowly filling the air again. The evening went on, but something had shifted. The energy was different now, charged with the power of what had just unfolded. Michaela looked at Sophia with newfound respect. She had witnessed something rare in the world of high-end dining, Someone standing up for what was right, regardless of the consequences. Thank you, Michaela said, her voice softer now, the anger dissipating. I didn't expect this, but I'm glad you stood up for what's right. Sophia smiled, her demeanor calm and composed as always. It's what we do here, she replied, her voice warm yet firm. Stand up for each other no matter what. And with that, the evening continued. But as the night wore on, the room seemed to buzz with a new energy, one that came from the realization that power, respect, and authority didn't always come from titles or status. Sometimes it came from the quiet strength of a woman who had fought her entire life to be heard, to be seen, and to ensure that others, no matter their race or gender, could do the same. The lesson was clear. Never underestimate the strength and authority of the person you've just insulted. In that moment, Sophia Williams had proven that respect wasn't given freely, it was earned, and she had earned it in a way that would leave an impression on everyone who witnessed the events of that night. If you enjoyed this gripping story, make sure to subscribe to expect stories for more thrilling tales. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. Your feedback helps us create better stories just for you. Stay tuned for more unexpected twists and captivating narratives.